Finding random frames in The Lighthouse until it's ugly. Shout out to the director Robert Eggers and the director Jaron Blaschke for making this a beautiful film. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Okay, great shot to begin with. Fairly simple shot. The camera is looking up at Robert Pattinson's character, who is a withered, rugged lighthouse man working at a lighthouse with Willem Dafoe's character. And all we have here is a symmetrical shot. He is pretty much center framed, and as far as lighting goes, it's a very overcast day. This is the sky behind him, and he has a little bit of fill light right here. And actually, if I zoom into his eye right here, I can see some kind of maybe a silk or something, or some kind of a light. He would not have this reflection in his eye just by looking straight down at the ground unless they are doing something to light him. So not an ugly shot. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is a cool shot too. The first thing I want to draw your attention to in regards to this shot is the aspect ratio. Look how square this frame is. Technically, it is a 1.19 to 1 aspect ratio, and that is more square of an aspect ratio than you will see in most movies, even most movies that look square. It is more square than a 4:3 aspect ratio. And the reason they did that is to make this movie more claustrophobic, because this movie is about two men in a very confined space with one another, and you want the audience to feel that claustrophobia along with the characters on screen, and one way to do that is to choose an aspect ratio that squeezes in the sides and cuts off some things that you might otherwise see with a wide screen. As far as lighting goes, it looks like the lighting is very simple. All you have right here is this little lantern. It's supposed to be a gas lantern, I believe, with like a little wick, but they did cheat in regards to this. They didn't actually use just a regular lantern or a lamp. They used I believe an 800 watt tungsten bulb inside of that lantern, and that's actually quite a bit of light coming from a little source like that. But they needed that because of the film stock they used. Specifically, they used Kodak Eastman XX 5222 black and white negative film. In this film stock, if I can find a close-up in this sequence, here we go. This film stock actually has less latitude in the blacks of the image. That means there's basically going to be less detail in the blacks, and that creates a pretty harsh fall off from the highlights of the face to the blacks of the face. So as you can see here, it transitions from light to dark very quickly. And that is only exacerbated by the type of light they use, which is only a one source kind of hard light. There's not really any diffusion on this. And this is one of the great things about this movie, is that the director and the DP have a lot of technical choices that they choose in regards to the camera and the framing and the aspect ratio that add to the story and add to the storytelling and the themes and the characters of the movie. And that's something I really want to hit home with not only you guys but myself as well, is that the technical aspects you choose for a film can heighten the narrative and heighten the themes and heighten the characters for that film. Mainly because they can be seen as metaphors for certain aspects of the film. So in this regards, the square claustrophobic aspect ratio is technically a metaphor for claustrophobia. So not ugly, let's go towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great, the lighthouse, perfect. So again, we see one reason why this aspect ratio was chosen. You can't really see it here, but it would look something like that. And the square aspect ratio just gives you more height to the image vertically than a horizontal widescreen image would. And why do you need more height to the image? Well, you're shooting a lighthouse, and lighthouses are very tall. The second thing that's cool about this shot is that in order to get these light beams you see of the light just moving through the atmosphere, they actually had to use a pretty powerful light bulb compared to what normal lighthouses would use. As far as I can tell, lighthouses in real life don't typically use a high wattage bulb because the lens that is surrounding that bulb actually amplifies the light that's coming from it, and you just don't need that much power. But in order to get the amount of light they needed for this film stock, and in order to get these nice beams of light, they actually had to use a 6K HMI light bulb, which is a lot more powerful than a regular lighthouse would be. The third thing to know about this lighthouse is that they actually built this lighthouse for this set. It's not actually a real lighthouse, it's more of a movie set lighthouse built on scaffolding, but they actually went to Nova Scotia and built this lighthouse, which is very impressive. So not ugly, let's go towards the end. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. It's inside the lighthouse now. What a pick. So I know I mentioned before that there was a 5K HMI light bulb in this, but for these specific scenes where the characters are looking directly at them, that would not be a good idea. That would probably make them go blind. So instead, they used a 2K tungsten light for these indoor shots, and I believe this is on a set. And as you can tell, this lens has a very intricate design. I think it cost over $100,000 to make, and technically it is a Fresnel lens, as you can see by this circular pattern here, just meaning that it concentrates the light and amplifies it. Okay, so not ugly. Let's go back towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Okay, basically the same kind of lighting setup we had earlier, almost identical. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great close-up of Robert Pattinson and a great mustache he's got there. Let's go around this area. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I love the shot of Willem Dafoe. The first thing you need to know is that since this shot is indoors, it was not shot on location where the lighthouse is built. Instead, this was shot in a studio. The next thing is something that I found very interesting, and that's that this movie was shot to be orthochromatic. And what orthochromatic means is basically that this was shot to exclude red light. And what I mean by that is, as you can see here, I have a simple graph of the visible light spectrum. And the visible light spectrum, as I understand it, occurs within wavelengths of about 400 to 800 nanometers. And don't ask me what a nanometer is, because this isn't a science channel. Go watch Tube Science for that crap. But what you need to know as a cinematographer is that you can actually create filters that block out certain wavelengths of light, and the cinematographer for this film actually created his own custom filter that blocks out all light above 570 nanometers. So basically you're not getting any of this yellow, orange, or red light in the image. But what does that do practically? Well, if you think about it, what's the most prominent color in someone's skin tones? Well, it's probably going to be red. And what it does, if you're not seeing the red in someone's skin tones, is that it actually makes the skin darker and more contrasty. Think about it this way. If you have a pimple on your face, what color is that pimple? Well, it's going to be red. It's going to be more red than the rest of your skin. So if you're shooting that pimple with a camera that does not perceive red light, it's going to look darker than the rest of your skin. Same thing with other kind of blemishes. And so if you want to make a movie about weathered sailors who have lots of blemishes because they have worked their entire lives on the sea and they are rugged, then maybe this is the technical choice to make to increase the narrative prowess and the punch, the emotional, just the ambiance and the things and stuff to your, you know what I'm saying. Okay, let's go back towards the beginning. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is actually a gorgeous shot and very differently lit than the other things we've seen. We have a very soft light coming from this direction now, and the soft light is coming from these windows, and I believe there is another window out on this side. I'm not entirely sure, but I imagine that's where this light is coming from. And the way they lit this shot is that they wrapped muslin, a kind of white cloth, around the outside of the windows, and then blasted those muslin cloths with M90s and 18K HMIs. Okay, let's go around the middle. 1, 2, 3. So the first thing I noticed about this shot is that the lighting on this female character is very different than on the male characters, and there's probably two reasons for that. First of all, she's a female character, and Hollywood has a tradition of lighting female characters differently, with more soft light and with more beauty filters. Sometimes they would even put a pantyhose over the lens in order to bloom the highlights and just soften the image more and give it more of a beauty look. And this film is trying to replicate some of those old Hollywood movies. Second of all, I believe this image is pretty surreal. I think this is a mermaid that Robert Pattinson's character is like imagining, so it makes sense that his dreamlike trance is more beautiful and not like the horrid place he is currently working in. Another thing that I found out is that I think this sequence of shots of her doesn't actually use the filter that I was talking about earlier that cut out the red and the orange and the yellow light. And that, again, if you remember what I said, that filter made people's skin look more craggly and brought out the blemishes. And so in order to make a beauty shot, you wouldn't want to use that filter. And so they didn't. Okay, let's go towards the end. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, this is a cool shot. I'm not sure what's going on with his teeth there. I have to research that. But overall, this is a really cool shot. Let's find some more random frames. There's got to be a dark random frame here somewhere that doesn't really look right. Here we go. Oh, no, that's a good frame. That's cool. 1, 2, 3. That's a really awesome frame. I love the lighting on their face there. Very silhouetted, but a little bit of light in the eye. Anyway, 1, 2, 3. Cool shot. Really, really great. Just primarily being lit by the sky. 1, 2, 3. It's a great frame as well. Probably being lit by that lantern we saw earlier. 1, 2, 3. Great shot. Notice the highlights blooming on the window, and that is also due primarily to the Baltar lenses. 1, 2, 3. That's one of the reasons they chose the Baltar lenses, was the way that they bloomed and shimmered the highlights of the image. Not ugly, not ugly. You'll see a lot of the same lighting styles and just almost exact frames in this movie, because they didn't really have many locations. They only had a couple locations, and so you'll see some of the same lighting styles. Not ugly. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think this frame is ugly, and that has nothing to do with the rest of the shot. The shot itself is great. Here's the shot in its full context, but that's just how this game works, guys. You gotta give me an out somewhere. So just know that I am not trying to make a point about the movie cinematography when I point out frames like this. It's just a fun exercise. That's all I have to say about this movie. It was great researching and learning about this film. Please let me know in the comments what film you want me to do next, because after all, that's what, I don't know. Goodbye.